So Chris already ruined my first slide. My name is Paul Esteves. Just to recap, if you don't know me, I'm a 3D artist. I use Houdini, which is a good thing. Otherwise, this would be a very awkward talk. I made a reel last year, and I didn't make a new one. So I'm going to play my reel from last year just to kind of give you an overview of the work that I do. I come from a motion graphics background, and I still do a lot of MoGraph type work. I've started doing other types of work too. But you'll see in my reel, it's very MoGraph heavy. Let me show you my reel, and then I'll talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Hey, I'm Paul, and it's Houdini time.
So I'm a huge fan of Houdini. Once I started learning it, it has endless possibilities, which got me super excited. But not only do I enjoy creating stuff in Houdini, I also enjoy teaching stuff. So shameless self-promotion, I have a Patreon to try and help facilitate the amount of time that it takes to create content. But because of is a special place in my heart, if you want to join and you haven't and you don't have money, that's fine. You can get 50% off with this code. I also made some Houdini time keyrings, which I'll put outside in our lounge area, I think we're calling it. So please grab one so that I can justify the cost of my 3D printer to my wife. Please don't leave any behind. But for today, I decided that I was going to make a title sequence. Side Effects always asks you way in advance if you would be a speaker. And then they ask you for the title of your talk, but because it's so far in advance, none of us ever know what we're actually going to talk about. So I decided when they asked that I was going to do a title sequence, and the reason was that OFFF has an official title sequence, but us Houdini speakers, we never get featured in that. We never get our own title sequence, so I took it upon myself to give us our own little special place. So I'm going to play you the unofficial OFFF title sequence, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Thank you. Yeah, so many of you probably know me from my title sequences. I've done, several of them over time, and you've probably seen a lot of them. But for those of you that may not recognize the ones I've done, I made a list so you can kind of get a good sense of all the ones I've done. And so I think it's only fair that we title my talk, How to Become a Title Sequence Designer Like Me, because of all my experience as a title sequence designer. I mean, it only made sense. And of course, I'm playing a little bit and joking a little bit, but as it comes to doing personal projects and as it comes to trying to create something from nothing, I wanted to talk about my 3-step process to becoming a world-class title sequence designer. I'm going to jump over that slide because when it comes to creating something from nothing, as I said, Side Effects kind of gives you free reign to talk about whatever you want. They don't say hey, we want to talk on MPM or Vellum. In fact, they don't even say they want it on Houdini. I think that's kind of implied. So we do it in Houdini. But for me, as somebody who's Not necessarily a creative director or an art director that comes up with ideas just like flowing through my head. When I get presented with a project, I kind of look at this whiteboard in front of me, and it can become a little bit overwhelming, and my mind starts to race, and I start to hyperventilate. I start to lie awake at night thinking of all the things I can do. Like maybe it's going to be MPM. Yeah, I'm going to do the whole thing just in MPM. I'm just going to exhaust that node. And I think, well, maybe the MPM will, turn into Vellum. And these ideas start going crazy in my mind. And what starts off as like a really neat little mood board with nice colors and, everything's neat in its block, suddenly my mind looks more like this. And it's very hard to get started because my Figma board has grown like massive. And as a person that jumps into Houdini, which can do anything and everything, I'm now stuck with, so where do I start? How do I actually start creating something that can get me somewhere? So my first slide and my first idea is always to steal like an artist and just start. There was a book that was written. I don't remember what the book was about. I just remember the title. And so this is my spin on it. And some people say that you need to steal and then adapt and change it. I just say steal. I'm from South Africa. It's a very common word there. So the CG Wiki, Matt Estella, he's amazing. He has a website that is just full of amazing resources, lots of HIP files, not even HIP NC files. You don't even have to convert them or copy nodes. You can just download them, use them full on in production, which is what I did. I changed literally nothing in Matt's file except change his tube primitive to a rock. And then I got a whole shot. I put a rock, I put a light, and that was one of my shots. I literally didn't change anything. Now, would I do this in an actual production, not for this talk? No, I wouldn't. But because of the point I was trying to make, I kind of left everything at default. Because I think sometimes it's really cool with Houdini to find somebody else's file that you think is inspiring and start poking around in it and trying different geometry and seeing what it creates. And then once you have a base, you can start changing things, moving things around, trying different forces, trying different cameras, trying 20 cameras if you've built an HDA. You can do super cool things, but it's that initial process of starting that is often really difficult. And so find HIP files. John Kuntz is an amazing Houdini artist. He had a bunch of streams, and he has a lot of HIP files floating around. Konstantin Magnus, the Odd Force forums, the Side Effects forums, the Houdini Academy Discord forum. There's HIP files floating everywhere. Now, don't use them like I did. Don't literally steal them and post them as your own work, but use them to learn and create and come up with something else. Something else is to, in the same vein, is to use old projects, but steal other people's ideas. Like Twisted Polly. Now, this guy is an insanely gifted, talented artist. I don't think he uses Houdini, thank goodness. Gives us a little bit of an advantage. But he created this project for Microsoft with all these growth on these like really cool shapes. And it got me thinking, like, I've done growths on some pretty boring shapes. So maybe I should just kind of like merge the two. So I stole his idea and I stole some of my old projects. And I decided to kind of copy a little bit of what he did. And so to get into Houdini, because this is a Houdini talk, I just took a circle, I gave it some noise, or I bent it around, and I gave it some noise. And there's no simulation here. This isn't a cloth sim. This is just an attribute noise to kind of like move it around and give it some kind of playful motion. And then I used a MOPS fall-off. If you don't want to use Mark Fancher's fall-offs, you can use MOPS. They're super fun. This is part of the free MOPS toolkit, so it's super accessible. This is called the MOPS spread fall-off. So you just pick a point, and you animate a slider, and it kind of goes through your mesh. And then I can just multiply my p-scale of my plants based on this. And I'm pretty much there. Like, I have a pretty cool-looking growth sim of plants. But obviously, I wanted to add a little bit more to this to try and really copy Twisted Polly. So I did a little clamp of the edge of my fall-off, and then I ran this through a particle sim. So as this is going through, I'm emitting particles on this edge fall-off, and they're kind of floating outwards. And then I can just copy some grass onto that, which is really hard to see in the corner there, but it's in the corner there. And then when you put it all together, you get a shot like this. Now, this shot literally took me an hour, 2 hours to create because I'd already done it. Like there was nothing new to this. And so I wasn't trying to break ground here. I wasn't trying to, like make the next big shot, the best shot that like people are going to repost and it's going to end up on Stash. This was just to get me started so that like this whiteboard of overwhelming, like where do I start in Houdini? What do I do? It was just to like, let's start making some shots. And I did another personal project a while ago to kind of make a chocolate bar for Feastables. It was totally like fake and on my own. And I faced the same sort of problem where I wasn't sure, how to start. There were so many ideas that I had. And so I just started with some random files I had and I put a chocolate bar and none of those made it into the final edit that I made. I rendered them, they were on my hard drive, but I never used them. And I think that's okay too. It's okay to start with some images and then not use them, but at least you're starting, you're making progress and you're making cool stuff. And maybe this will, be used in something else later down the road, and that's okay too. So the second thing that I came up with when I wanted to make personal projects is to challenge myself. And in this title sequence, this was the favorite part for me. Like I didn't expect to come down this journey of using heart fields to do anything. But it was like this little passion that reignited in Houdini, like when I discovered Vellum 5 years ago and like my life changed. This was super exciting for me. Like I just absolutely loved the results I was getting with a few nodes. But let me take you back before I explain this and tell you how this started. I even have a slide, how it started. Stefan, who's going to be presenting with XK after me, he presented last year, absolutely phenomenal talk. He's a phenomenal artist, but he said this. Let me play this for you and then...
And it's super simple. It's just a handful of nodes. Not everything has to be a crazy big node tree.
Maybe you missed it, so I'm going to play it again, but I've slowed down the audio.
And it's super simple. It's just a handful of nodes. Paul, I challenge you to make it with fewer nodes. Not everything has to be a crazy big node tree.
I want to say, and I will say it multiple times, I absolutely love Stefan. He's an amazing artist, and I'm making fun of him, but purely because I'm jealous of how good he is. But this got me thinking, like he did 11 nodes, I counted them, and I thought, can I make this with less nodes? Not that it's for any reason, but just for fun, can I? And yes, I can. It's pretty cool. And so I decided, after doing some digging and asking some people on Discord forums, can you do this without converting heart fields into VDB? Because that's quite a slow process and it makes everything slow down and you have to do some kind of conversions. And the heart field node or toolkit actually has a heart field erode node, which is a solver. And so solver means it iterates on each frame, which means we can do stuff within a solver. And if you're brand new to Houdini, heart fields are like a landscape generation toolkit that comes with Houdini. So you drop down and it's basically a 2D volume and you can add some noises and you can play with settings, just slide them around. It's really fast, really interactive. And then you can drop down the heart field erode node. And this, I guess, is supposed to, well, it does like precipitation. I think that's what it's supposed to do, like how the real world would erode a mountain or something. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. I'm a motion designer, not a VFX artist. So I want to break the tools and try use them in different ways. This is the default behavior. So if you just lay down those 3 nodes, so you have a heart field noise, and a heart field erode, you get this. It's okay. It's not totally mind-blowing. It's not going to change the world. But then what we can do is we can dive inside the heart field erode. Again, as I said, this is a solver, so we can try stuff. And so the first thing I want to do is just drop down a heart field blur. Like, what will this do? If every iteration we're blurring, so every frame it's looking at the previous frame and it's going to blur that, and then it's going to look at that frame and blur that again, and that gets you this. Mind-blowing. I can see it. I can see it in the crowd. Now, obviously, this isn't anything mind-blowing, but you can start to see how we can build things inside the solver and we can start to iterate and do some cool stuff. So now I can drop down a heart field distort node, and this just kind of lets you warp the heart fields. But because we're in a solver, we can also animate one of the parameters with just like a super basic expression and see what that does. I'm not advecting anything yet. I've not hit Stefan's level just yet. We're getting there. But you start to get some pretty interesting results, because not only are you blurring it, you're distorting it, and it's still eroding. It's still doing its basic function. I've not told it to not do that. So you get all these kind of intricacies that are pretty hard to do otherwise. You can also use a height field project. This lets you take external geometry and project it onto your height field. And you can't really see it there, but I'm just taking the pig head and I'm just lifting it up. And because we're inside a solver, it's just doing it all, per frame, and it's allowing me to animate things, and it gets crazy cool results. And this is all just, flip books from the viewport, nothing fancy, just some basic things. Then we obviously want to do something exciting. So we bust out Vex, and then we do some things that we steal on the OddForce forum, and we don't pretend like we know what they're doing. Like this. It's a volume gradient, cross product, volume sample, all that stuff it's cool. It's this. And I literally stole it off OddForce. It was Animatrix. He put this together. So you basically taking the shapes of the mountain, and you're going to use this to push stuff away. And you get this crazy cool result. I would never know how to do this. If somebody said hey, I want you to replicate this, I wouldn't know. But in exploring and in challenging myself and in trying different things and just playing in Houdini, you get these really interesting, wild results. And inside the solver, you can also use a height field layer. And this just lets you blend. It's kind of like a lerp or a blend shape. And so now I'm just blending more towards one than the other. And it's a very similar result, but you start to get a little bit more, texture and detail in the movement of it. And it starts to look kind of cool. And so I thought, well, what happens if I just duplicate these nodes? I don't have any more tools that I know how to use, so let me just use the same ones again with different values. And where will this lead me? Okay, that's kind of cool. Now it's actually starting to add vect. Listen, I'm 3 nodes in. Stefan had 11. So, come on. I'm just kidding, Stefan. And then if you start playing with the values, I've changed nothing else in the setup. I'm now just playing with values. And if you've ever played with the height field erosion node, just its base nodes, there's about 6,000 buttons. There are so many that change so many things. And you can just go in there and move one. Say, I want more erosion, less erosion. I want more rainfall, even though I have no rainfall, but it does weird and wonderful things. And you can just sit and play. And so obviously, I sat playing many, many hours, and it got to the point where I was okay, I should probably start setting up some wedging. And if you don't know what wedging is, it's a Houdini kind of setup that lets you take random parameters. You can stipulate how many you want, and you feed them in, and you just say, I want 20 different variations. Pick random sample of numbers and just simulate. And so I would run this overnight, and I would get some that are the same, it didn't change anything, but some that are wildly different. And it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. Now, these are all just flip books from Houdini, so they get a little bit boring. So I decided to kind of just compile them in a small montage. So we can dim the lights and we can watch this little montage together.
In a world where complexity reigns supreme and node trees stretch into the abyss, one height field dares to do less. They said it couldn't be done. They said, you can't shape mountains with minimal nodes.
A crazy big node tree.
They were wrong. From the creators of Over-Engineered Disaster and the 7,000 node megashader comes the silent sculptor of the simulation, the minimalist of the mesh, the efficient king of elevation. With less than 5 nodes, he will reshape the world. Coming soon.
I want to say again, I absolutely love Stefan, and please, I did check with him. I sent this to him before the time, and I made sure that he was okay with it because, he's amazing, and this is just for fun. But something else before I conclude this section is the height field nodes also have this height field output. You can go into COPS if you want to do some crazy cool things, but if you, a simpleton like me, you just want to output these as textures, there's a height field output that does it all for you. You literally drop it in and you write a path, and it'll export the, uncompressed EXRs or whatever this stuff is. And so now you have your height fields as a texture, so you can map it onto other shapes. It doesn't have to be a flat grid that's a mountain. You can put it on other shapes, and it can lead into some pretty cool experimental MoGraphy things, like apples. That's Apple, if you want to use this in your new campaign, let me know. I'm available. Talking about challenging yourself, I came up with this after being inspired to copy a friend of mine, Riff. I had the pleasure of working with Riff a little while ago. He's an amazing Houdini artist. Really enjoyed working with him. He's based in Australia, and I was in Europe, and we were working for a studio in LA. And so him and I kind of overlapped a few hours, which was cool. So we would chat when no one else was awake. And then he posted this, and then a few months later, him and I were talking, and I was like, hey, did you use Vellum fluids for this? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, okay, I think I know how you did it. And he's like, oh, do you want me to send you the file? And I was like, no, I want to try and challenge myself. I want to see if I can create the same thing that you created in a different way. And he was like, okay, cool, yeah, go for it. So yeah, he was the OG. I think he was the one that started this. I don't know, maybe there was someone else, but he was the first one that I saw that did this. And so I jumped into Houdini thinking, like, how would I approach this? So I created some spheres, and I used the copy to points just to kind of create a cluster of spheres that weren't intersecting. And then as a base test, I just used a Vellum balloon, like preset, which sets up soft bodies. And then I used the Vellum solver, and inside the solver, I used a popper tract. And a popper tract just moves everything inwards. So now you just have this like nice kind of bouncing motion. And obviously this isn't what I wanted, but this was my start. So I got rid of the Vellum soft body or balloon setup, and I dropped in a Vellum fluid. And the way that Vellum fluid works is it's really cool and very interesting. It has a phase attribute. And by default, anything that you pipe in there will have the same phase attribute. And so when you run it, Vellum will just see this as like one big fluid that's separate, and then you merge it together. Like, it doesn't know that they're separate objects unless you tell it to. So I can use something like an index attribute. You can use whatever you want, a class attribute, something that stipulates that each of these spheres is different. And then I can set phase to be different on each sphere. So each sphere now has a different phase attribute. And when you run this, now it's going to treat these as separate objects. So now you get this kind of like soft body behavior, but with fluids, which is really interesting and really cool. And you can kind of see where this is going now. If I just take some attribute and I move the phase attribute to be the same, then slowly Vellum is going to kind of merge these. Because once it sees the phase attribute as being the same, it sees it as one object, and it merges those points. And so I set up a very basic trigger here where I just like triggered in a stepped attribute. That's why like the channel ramp has got those steps. And then inside the solver, I just set phase to be based on this trigger attribute. It's like super basic. It does just a handful of nodes, guys, and then we have this. And then you can see now when it gets to this kind of light purple, pink, I don't know what color that is, it merges them together because I'm setting those phase attributes to all be 5 when the trigger hits that. Now this is all good and well, but when it comes to meshing, you have a bit of a problem now. Because VDB doesn't know anything about what's going on in Vellum, when you try and mesh this, it has this kind of smoothed intersection, which looks okay, but it doesn't look amazing. Like, it would be cool if we could kind of keep these as separate, but I have a phase attribute. So I can just run a very simple for loop for each loop. I don't know if there's a difference. And I can just mesh them individually. And because I have each object separately, I can just transfer attributes like UVs at the same time. So now I have all these individual spheres that have their own mesh and have their own UV attribute, which is really cool. I can do some nice meshing. I can stick things to them. It's really fun. And so now with that, I get something like this, which I thought was really cool. I wish I had come up with it, but I didn't. I just stole it, which is okay too. You gotta do what you gotta do to survive in this world, right? So the last thing is to try new things. If you're trying to get into Houdini, try new things. There's so many possibilities. Side Effects is always giving us new toys, maybe sometimes too many. Chris, if you could slow them down. We were just saying like, half of us haven't tried Apex. We haven't had a chance to watch the 5-hour masterclass or thing on cops. Like, it's overwhelming. But for me, when MPM came out, I was like, okay, this is super fun. Now, it's very similar to grains, the Vellum grains, But for me, there's like something kind of cool about MPM. There's like a texture detail, and with the presets, you get like this really interesting behavior that grains doesn't do. So it's different. And I did a YouTube video about MPM, and I showed the difference between MPM and grains, and there's just a texture quality difference that out of the box it gives you, which is really cool. This setup is not decomposed, as Benjamin was talking about. It's an absolute mess. There's no nice bubbles and everything. I should go back and do that. But basically, it's just two spheres with a noise separately, so that I could have different MPM values on each one. So I could try different presets, different stiffness if I wanted to. I ended up not for the final of this one, but you'll see later where I tried some different values. And then I just had a velocity force pushing these two together so they would kind of like collide with one another. And yeah, it's a very basic setup. Inside the solver, I had a pop attract, and then a pop axis force, which just lets you spin things around, and that's what kind of spins them around each other. And because these are two separate MPM sources, it does treat them separately, like they don't just merge together. So you get this kind of really nice playful interaction here where they kind of merge, and then you'll see they spin around each other, which is super cool. That's like a very nice look, and I didn't do much to this. I didn't change any settings, nothing customized in this. It's just straight up Houdini nodes, just trying different things. And then afterwards, I can split them out with the attributes that MPM gives us. I can drop some UVs on them. Because it's a static point count, it's not reseeding or anything like that Flip does. It's really easy to get UVs onto MPM, which is really helpful if you want to do any sort of texture generation or any sort of texturing to this. So now you get these two shapes, and you can see when I eventually pipe this in, I have some UVs. Now there's some problems with my UVs, and I was like, well, I don't really care. It's good enough for me. And when you see the UVs with all the little stretched lines, and then you see the texture, you notice them, but you didn't notice them before. Don't try and behave like you did. And it's just a super fun result that it's fun to explore new things and try new things and see what happens. Like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's fun to try anyway. And then I thought, well, I have two different simulations. Maybe one of them doesn't need to be meshed. Maybe one of them I just use as points, because it's just points. So I took the points, and I left them as points, and you get this kind of swirling interaction with one mesh and one point. And then I just copied little fragments on with copy to points, super basic setup, and you get this. It's kind of cool. I liked it. You don't need to like it. And as I said earlier, thank you. It's the affirmation I've been waiting for all day. And as I said earlier, I'm a huge proponent of wedging. It's a little bit complicated if you're not used to it. So there's a labs file cache that lets you do wedging like basically for free. You literally have to click 4 buttons and you can wedge. And that's what I did here. And so all I did was I just took different MPM presets. I didn't change anything else. I just used different MPM presets. It's like I did a switch. So I did lots of MPM nodes, and I just did a switch for each different cache. And I ran this. It took, I don't know, maybe an hour, 2 hours. MPM is really fast, unless you want to do high stiffness. Then it's game over. So like metal or high stiffness values are really slow, and if it jumps off of your GPU, it's game over. But anything like this, it's really quick, and it's super fast and fun to iterate with. And you get like really interesting, crazy results. Number 3 up there with this like belt-looking thing. It's cool. I don't know what I'd use it for, but it's fun. And you get these ones that are crazy and like they look like splashes. It's just a super fun, different type of look that I don't think I would have gotten with grains, but I can with MPM. And thank you to Side Effects for giving us fun new toys to play with all the time. So let's watch the title sequence one more time. And then if you have any questions, you are free to ask them. Any questions? Yeah. Hold on, Chris is just... All right, well, just shout your question and I'll repeat it in the mic.
How did you put UVs on the normal section that you showed right now?
So the question was, how did I put UVs on the MPM one? Is that what you mean?
Is this video section?
Oh, this, yeah. So this one, I was going to talk about it, but I knew I was going to run out of time. This was another one of those that is on the Odd Force forum. It's been around for, I don't know, 15 years, and somebody posted a differential curve growth. Is that what it's called? I don't know. Yeah. Simon nodded, and that's all the approval I need. And for the longest time, I've wondered how to get UVs onto that until I did a couple different VDB things where you can advect. And in the advection process, instead of just advecting the surface or the whatever, like the main one, you can advect multiple VDBs. So you can advect rest. And if you advect rest through your VDB, you can then after that use rest either straight up in your rendering thing as like as like a rest position, or you can use rest and then create UVs out of that. So I just advected rest and then you turn that into UVs. I have a tutorial on my Patreon if anyone's interested. Yeah.
How good is MPM high point counts?
How good is it with?
High point counts.
High point counts. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how many points were in that. I have done some with pretty intense point counts, and I have a 4090 graphics card, which has, 24 gigs of RAM. As long as it stays on the VRAM, I find that it's pretty fast. As soon as you go out of your VRAM, it jumps onto the CPU, and then it's like days per frame. So as long as you can keep the point count, so as long as something was kind of running on my GPU, I knew I would be done in a few hours, no matter the point count. But as soon as the points were too high for my GPU, it was game over.
We have a mic,
Ooh.
I think.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Just one question is, what tool did you use to do the caches, like the random caches you did for the height fields?
Yeah, so there's two different ways that you can do, well, probably more than two, but the one way is to use like TOPS and PDG and wedging, which is like a separate network, and you can set it up and you have a lot of control and it's super nice, but it can be a little bit of a hurdle and there's buttons that you have to check, and I always have to ask someone else how to do it. Or you can use as a labs file cache, and it's basically exactly the same as the normal file cache, except it has a little drop down at the bottom that you check wedging, and then you just click how many attributes you want it to choose. So you can say like erode, I want to change the blur amount, and you just click how many attributes you want, and then you set those attributes in the different fields, and then you click simulate in background, and it just runs, and it gives you all these different wedges. And then you can kind of click through them and watch them. It's super, super cool.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
15-second on PDG and TOPS. So PDG is the procedural dependency graph, and it's the same as TOPS. They're synonymous. It is a network inside of Houdini, a feature set that allows you to distribute tasks so that tasks can run at the same time and not have to worry about dependencies. And it's a really powerful way to automate workflows. Any other questions?
Exactly what I thought.
Where's Stefan? Put your hand up, Stefan. You in here?
He's
I want to hear from Stefan on this.
All right.
I'm sorry, Stefan. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Thank you so much for the shout out. I really appreciate it. And I have to say, I'm such a big fan of your work for such a long time. So thank you, Paul. Really, I mean it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Your work is amazing. Come give me a hug. I'm just kidding. Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions? Awesome, Paul. Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.